In this tutorial, I'm going to talk about using the names functionality to name cells and ranges in Excel. This functionality can be found under the Formulas tab under the Define Names group. So why do we use names? Well, the main reason is that names allow us to parse through formulas in a more intuitive way. And so whether you're familiar with nested if statements, I would argue that this second formula is much easier to interpret than the one that uses the cell references. And so the second one says if the sales are greater than the threshold 2, give the higher bonus rate. Otherwise, if the sales is just greater than the first threshold, then apply the lowest bonus rate. Otherwise, give a bonus of 0. The second reason why we use cell names is because it allows us to navigate through workbooks in an easier way, and I'll show you that later. There are many ways in which we can define names, and the easiest one is by using the name box. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to do this in a simple example, and I'll talk about kind of the naming convention that we use to name cells, as well as what it means for us to have a global scope when we define a name. Then, in order to make use of the structure and of the headers that exist in a workbook, we can use the Create from Selection option that is in the Define Names group to allow Excel to automatically pull in names from the headers and apply them to the cells with the values that we want to then use in other formulas. The next thing I'll do is I'll talk to you about how to name a range of cells as opposed to an individual cell, and how this is useful in terms of copying and pasting formulas that run a set of columns or rows. Sometimes when we define a name, we want it to only be known to the local worksheet. We don't want it to apply. We don't want it to be visible to other formulas in the workbook that are in other worksheets. And so to do that, we have to change the scope of the name so that it's defined locally. And to do that, we use the Define Name functionality in the Define Names group. I'll then talk about how to use the Name Manager both to create, to edit, and to delete names. And I'll discuss what happens if you delete a name that now has been used within a worksheet. Okay? And I will wrap up by talking about how do we use names to navigate within a workbook. So for all of the examples that I'm going to use, I'm going to rely on this very simple example where we have salespeople who have a particular given sales amount, and I want to calculate the bonus for each salesperson based on a bonus rate of 10%. Okay, so let me quickly go to the worksheet, and one of the things that I could do here is I could just say the bonus is equal to the sales amount times the bonus rate. Clearly, I would have to use an absolute cell reference here, but this would give me the bonus rate. Okay, but rather than just doing this, I want to create a name that's going to allow us to make this formula more readable. So let me go back to here and show you how I would do this. So the first thing I have to do is I want to define cell C3 to be known as the bonus rate. And so to do that, I have to first click on cell C3. And notice that I don't want to click on the label that is already there, right, in cell B3. I actually want to define cell C3, so I click on it. And then I click on the name bar and I type bonus rate and I press enter. And then this is now, rather than having to refer to cell C3 using the label C3, I will be able to refer to that cell as bonus rate. And that's going to be a reference that kind of is similar to having an absolute reference. And we'll talk about that later, but let me do this so that you can see. So here I'm going to come to C3, click on it, go to the name box, and type in bonus rate. Now notice that I put in on purpose a space in between the two. And when I press enter, I'm going to get an error message from Excel that's saying, this is not a valid name. So I say, okay. And so there are two things that I can do here. I can either type bonus rate without a space, or I can use Excel's convention to put an underscore every time I would have a space. And so then I press enter. So now if I come to cell D6 and I say the bonus is going to be the sales amount for salesman A times the C3, now it says that's the bonus rate. Okay. And if I drag this once, I see that I continue to point to the bonus rate in my formula. Now, what does it mean for this to be having a global scope? So if I come here and I say bonus rate times 3, it recognizes the value of what I'm referring to, the cell, and multiplies it by 3. But it's global because I can go to another worksheet and type in bonus rate. And by the way, every time the defined names appear with a little name label next to them. And to access it, I can either press tab and then enter, or once I begin to see the name, I can double click on the label and then press enter. Okay, and so that's how I get. But this using the name box gives me a global scope. I can see it in any worksheet in the workbook.